Turn on any news channel today. What do you see? Massive American aircraft carriers moving toward the Middle East, stealth fighters worth billions of dollars, and fiery statements making it feel like we are on the brink of a world-altering war. The entire globe is holding its breath. But what if I told you that everything you are seeing on those screens is just a trap? A terrifying historical trap that has swallowed everyone who ever came near it. And right now, it is swallowing the American empire, slowly, and with terrifying mathematical precision. Today, we aren't going to talk about the shallow daily politics you hear all the time. Today, we are unveiling the deepest, most dangerous hidden pattern in all of human history. A secret completely ignored by the think tanks in Washington and overlooked in the closed corridors of the Pentagon, even though it is written in blood on every single page of history. The pattern is this. Across thousands of years, every superpower, every invincible empire that has tried to conquer Iran or ancient Persia with the goal of permanently subjugating it has met one of three inevitable fates: total collapse, humiliating retreat, or permanent paralysis. Every single empire that has ever walked the earth has fallen into this trap, without a single exception. And today, stepping away from the emotion and using the cold, hard rules of game theory and structural history, I am going to show you the exact evidence proving that America is simply the next victim on this long list. The brilliant author Mark Twain coined a phrase that explains it perfectly. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And when it comes to Iran, the rhyme is deafening. Let's rewind the clock and look at the pattern of this terrifying trap. Alexander the Great swept across the known world and conquered Persia. Did he win? Militarily, yes. But what happened next? Alexander died suddenly, his great empire immediately tore itself apart from the inside, and the Iranians returned to swallow the Middle East for the next 500 years. What about the Roman Empire? The greatest, most brutal military machine of the ancient world. They fought the Iranians in a continuous, bloody war of attrition for 300 years. The result? The Great Rome collapsed and fell, while the Persian Empire stood and watched it burn. Even the Mongols, the worst nightmare humanity ever knew. They swept across Asia, burned Baghdad to the ground, wiped entire civilizations from existence, and completely occupied Iran. Did Iran submit? No. The exact opposite happened. Iran absorbed the Mongols. It enchanted them with its culture, transformed them, made the fierce occupiers adopt its religion, wear its clothes, and champion its arts. The brutal conqueror became the victim, completely Persianized. Fast forward to the modern era. The Soviet Union, an unstoppable nuclear superpower, tried to keep its forces in northern Iran after World War II. But eventually it was forced to withdraw in humiliation, outplayed by Iranian patience and cunning. The great secret that Western decision-makers completely fail to understand today is that Iran is not just a geographic space or a state with modern political borders. Iran is a civilizational black hole, a historical force that uses complex geography, vast stretches of time, and deadly strategic patience as weapons, and has done so continuously for 3,000 years. Empires overextend. They get infected with megalomania and hubris. Their resources bleed out, and they fall like autumn leaves. While Iran remains. How is this happening right now to America? How did trillion-dollar American weapons suddenly become a fatal weakness? And why do I say the Pentagon is walking blindfolded toward its own demise? Buckle up and pay very close attention to these next few minutes, because we are about to dive into the details of the deadly math. So, let's ask the obvious question. The question everyone is screaming at their screens right now. If America is the undisputed military hegemon of the world, why not just invade? Why not just roll the tanks into Tehran, overthrow the government, and finish the job? The answer is a nightmare for the Pentagon. It comes down to two catastrophic realities. The first is brutal, unforgiving geography. When America invaded Iraq, it was essentially driving through a flat, open desert, a superhighway for American tanks. Iran is an entirely different beast. You are looking at a country 4 times the size of Iraq. It is a natural fortress, guarded by the jagged Zagros Mountains in the west, the impenetrable Alborz Mountains in the north, and scorching, deadly deserts everywhere else. It is a geographical meat grinder. The legendary Napoleon Bonaparte famously warned his generals, never march on Moscow. If he were looking at a map today, he would absolutely say, never, ever march on Tehran. Let's look at the cold, hard math. Standard military doctrine dictates that to successfully invade and occupy a hostile, mountainous territory the size of Iran, you need a minimum of 3 to 4 million soldiers. Do you know how many active duty troops the entire United States military has right now, globally? About 1.3 million. The math doesn't just look bad. It is completely, fundamentally broken. There is zero scenario, Absolutely none. Where America has the manpower to physically conquer Iranian territory, it is a mathematical impossibility. But geography is just the appetizer. This brings us to the second and much more fatal flaw, the dirty secret nobody in Washington wants to talk about, the inverted military pyramid. If you want to win a long, grueling war of attrition, historical doctrine says your military pyramid must have its cheapest, most replaceable, and most flexible resource at the absolute bottom: infantry soldiers. That is how every victorious empire in history was built. But the American military? Its pyramid is completely upside down. It is balancing on its tip. At the base of the entire U.S. military strategy is air power. Why? The answer is simple, and it is terrifying. The military-industrial complex. Air power is the most expensive toy on the battlefield. It generates the most massive government contracts, and it literally prints billions of dollars for defense contractors. The chilling reality is that the American military machine is no longer designed to actually win wars. It is designed to sell incredibly expensive weapon systems. That is why you have the F-35 stealth fighter. A jet that costs $100 million per unit, took 26 years to develop, and yet a cheap, low-tech Iranian missile can knock it out of the sky. That is why America built the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier, a $13 billion floating city, the pride of the Navy, that had to literally pack up and run away from the Persian Gulf just weeks after arriving. Why? Because the Pentagon was utterly terrified of a $13 billion ship being sunk by a swarm of asymmetrical, cheap drones. When your military is built strictly for corporate profit rather than combat endurance, fighting a patient, deeply entrenched, and cunning enemy like Iran isn't just a strategic mistake. It is military suicide. This brings us to the ultimate weapon Iran is using right now. It's not a secret nuclear bomb. It's something far more devastating to an empire built on money. It is called asymmetric cost exchange. This is exactly how Iran destroys empires in the 21st century. Not with swords, not with cavalry, but with ruthless, unforgiving mathematics. Look at this equation carefully. One Iranian attack drone costs roughly $50,000. One American interceptor missile, depending on the system, costs anywhere from $3 million to $10 million. Think about what that means. Every single time Iran launches just one cheap drone, and America is forced to shoot it down to protect its bases, America spends at minimum 60 times more money than Iran. Now, imagine this. Iran doesn't launch one drone. They launch swarms. Hundreds of drones and cheap rockets simultaneously, deliberately designed to overwhelm multi-billion-dollar American air defenses. We literally witnessed a single Iranian ballistic missile being targeted by 11 different American interceptors, and all 11 missed. In a matter of seconds, tens of millions of dollars in American ordnance vaporized into thin air, just to stop one single missile. Do you see the trap now? The United States is literally bleeding money from the sky. The most powerful military in human history is now desperately racing against the clock before it runs out of interceptor missiles. Let me repeat that. America is terrified of running out of bullets before the enemy runs out of cheap drones. This is the exact same strategy the ancient Parthians used to exhaust the Roman legions 2,000 years ago. You refuse to fight the mighty empire head-on. You bleed it slowly. You drain its treasury. You exhaust its logistics. You break its political will. They are forcing the Pentagon to bankrupt itself just to play defense. But everything I just showed you? The burning jets, the empty missile silos, the billions of dollars wasted in the sky? That is just the distraction. The real war, the actual war, isn't about destroying military bases. Iran is aiming for the very heart of the American empire, the US dollar. Let me explain the greatest open secret in global geopolitics. Since 1973, almost all the oil in the world has been bought and sold in one currency, US dollars. This is the petrodollar system. It is the only reason America can print trillions of dollars, run massive deficits, and fund its military without its economy collapsing into dust. To keep the empire alive, the world must need dollars. And to need dollars, the oil must flow. Enter Iran. Iran now has a chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the entire planet's oil supply flows through this tiny, narrow bottleneck, and Iran is showing the world that they, not America, decide if that oil reaches the market. When Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, a man who controls $10 trillion, goes on live television and warns that this conflict could push oil to $150 a barrel, you need to pay attention. He is warning of a catastrophic global recession. But here is where the Iranian strategy becomes terrifyingly brilliant. America's allies in the Gulf are the linchpin of the petrodollar, but they have a fatal weakness. They get 90% of their food through that exact strait. Even worse, They rely on exposed desalination plants for 60% of their fresh drinking water. Imagine this. A swarm of $50,000 Iranian drones hits those water plants. Within just 2 weeks, megacities of 10 million people completely run out of water. They are absolutely terrified. And a terrified Gulf state, fighting just to survive, will stop pumping its oil money into American stock markets. They will stop funding the trillion-dollar AI bubble. If that money stops, the American financial Ponzi scheme collapses overnight. Iran doesn't need to bomb New York to defeat America. They just need to turn off the tap. So, you might be screaming at your screen right now, why doesn't America just change its strategy? The brutal truth? They can't. The quality of American governance has completely collapsed. You are watching an administration that decides to start a war based on the next 24-hour news cycle. They launched strikes with zero plan for the day after. They operated on the arrogant, delusional assumption that Iran would just roll over and surrender. Meanwhile, Iran has been preparing for this exact moment. For 20 years. 2 decades of obsessive planning. They mapped every American base. They built underground drone cities. They studied the psychology of American politicians. They knew America's greatest weakness is the fear of casualties and a fragile, divided public. They built an entire civilization's strategy around breaking America's political will. This is the ultimate clash. An ancient civilization that has survived 3,000 years by learning from every scar, versus an empire that has been dominant for 80 years and has forgotten how to think. Let me give you my final conclusion. Not as a prophecy, but as a cold, calculated geopolitical fact. America will not lose on a traditional battlefield, but America will lose. The cost of this war, in money, in global reputation, in domestic inflation, and in political chaos, will become so incredibly toxic that America will be forced to pack up and retreat from the Middle East. Just like they did in Afghanistan, but on a massive, historical scale. And when the dust settles, the Middle East will be ruled by the ones who stayed. Rome fell. The Mongols fell. The Soviets fell. They didn't fall in one massive battle. They collapsed from within because they overextended, and their hubris blinded them to their own decay. Iran is just doing what it has always done, waiting, letting the empire bleed itself to death. Iran has time. Iran always has time. Everyone says Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires, but the original, the oldest, and the most patient graveyard in human history is Iran. What do you guys think? Is the American empire truly walking into a 3,000-year-old trap, or can they invent a way out? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this video changed how you see the world, hit that subscribe button. The truth is deeper than the headlines. I'll see you in the next one.